Hello everybody, this is Bradley from Politics UK. With the 2026 bumper local elections just 4 weeks away, and with the campaigns in full swing, here is a roundup of this week's latest polling, and later in the video we will be taking a look at how each party stacks up at the national level now, compared to not only last year, but also 2022, when the majority of these council seats were last up for election. So starting off with the YouGov poll that was released earlier this week, we have our first reporting on Restore Britain and your party within a YouGov poll. Now this 4% that Restore are polling at, I believe nationally Restore probably around that 3 to 4% level at the moment. Find Out Now did find some when Rupert Lowe party was prompted to be around 10%, 8%. But I think it was focal data a couple of weeks ago found them at around 1%. We've had a couple of polls now that sort of put them, I would say, given where the other number has been the last few weeks, I think they are definitely around that 3 to 4%. We have seen that rise. Your party's sitting at about 1%. I think a lot of their voters that they originally drew have definitely moved to the Green Party now, so they've sort of moved towards that camp. And yeah, I think that 1%, yeah, your party might still win a couple of seats. You know, the MPs that they do have at the moment could well maintain their seats. But after a very convoluted and messy start, I do think your party have they've missed their opportunity with the rise of Zach Polanski and the Green Party. Now, moving up, the Lib Dems sitting at around 13%. It is up one on last week, but that's very much margin of error stuff. And if there's one consistency in British politics, it's that the Lib Dems will probably be polling at around 10 to 13%. But what's really interesting this week is that the Green and Labour Party are both down to 16%. So that is a drop in 5% between them, which is definitely very significant. Now, I do think we might see a slight correction on this next week. I do think we'll probably see the Greens up 1 or 2, Labour also up 1 or 2. I'm not sure they're both going to rebound completely, but I wouldn't be shocked to see a little bit of a reversal, because I don't believe that the left of British politics has just shrunk by 5% over the last week. So I think, you know, there's an element of sampling in here, and we'll probably even see Reform drop down again, Conservatives drop a point or two, and we'll see a little bit of a correction. Conservative Party back up to second place with the Green Party drop as well, so obviously really positive for them. They're sort of holding on that 17 to 19% vote share they've been sitting at for a while now, post-budget. And Reform, YouGov is still one of their weaker pollsters, sitting there at 24% at the moment. That is up 1 on last week, but again, I think with YouGov, Reform anywhere between 23 to 25%. So yeah, this definitely checks out, especially since we've seen Restore really come into the scene. They have definitely taken sort of 2 or 3% of that Reform vote share, pushing them down from, I mean, YouGov was always one of their weaker pollsters, around 27, 28% anyway. And moving on to our next poll, this is really interesting from the Good Growth Foundation, because I think it really just highlights the changes that we have seen over the last few months. So, you know, this is very in line since the 16th of February, which is roughly when Restore really sort of came onto the scene as and announced as a party. Others, yeah, moving up around 2%. Again, Restore probably around that 3% window, so that checks out perfectly. Lib Dems, fairly stable. Greens seeing a real surge, definitely overtaking the Lib Dems now and starting to put a little bit of pressure on the Labour and Conservative Party. And as we've seen in wider polling, the top 3 parties have all seen a little bit of a fall, with the Greens' rise, with Restore's rise. It has made them all fall by a couple of points. So yeah, I think this poll, there's nothing really interesting to read into here. Good, healthy lead for Reform. Labour just about holding second ahead of the Conservatives, with a little bit of a gap still to the Greens. I think that's the most interesting thing between these polls, is what is the gap between Labour and the Green Party, because when it comes to local elections, really, that's going to shape the narrative and will, as Gorton and Denton proved, have a massive impact for the Green Party. Will they be able to overtake Labour in that national polling picture? And then we got a poll yesterday from Moreincommon as well. Very much margin of error stuff here. Labour up in second place, Conservatives moving down to third, down 2%. Lib Dems, 12%. Others sitting at 3%, so again, Restore probably in that 2 to 4% window within this poll. And Reform, actually, without increasing their vote share, do now have a 10-point lead, with the Conservatives drop. So Moreincommon now, I think, is definitely one of Reform's more healthy pollsters. You know, we're not seeing a lead of 10 points among all of them at the moment. It's sort of gone down more towards 6 to 8. So if we take a wider look to the national picture, we now see Reform sitting back up around 27%. Definitely signs of a bit of a rebound there over the last week or two. And equally, we've seen the rise in other slightly dipping as well. So again, this is only a 1-point movement really, but I think it is potentially ahead of local elections, a bit of consolidation behind Reform, as some of the Restore voters are going, okay, at least for the locals, I'm going to start backing Reform again. The Lib Dems have also definitely balanced out, I think now. They were sitting at around 14-15% over last summer, but they have dropped down back to that sort of mid-12% range. Labour still currently hold just a slight lead over the Conservatives, but they have been swapping that position for a while now. So don't be surprised when we come back to this again. Maybe the Conservatives Conservatives are back ahead of Labour, and this does switch around again. But really the interesting thing is, what is the Green Party going to be able to do? Are we going to get around the local elections? Are we going to get this inflection point where the Green Party's trend continues? Labour probably do lose a little bit. They'll probably be sat around here somewhere. I think there's scope for the Green Party to maybe get up to 20% on the weighted tracker. Where does that go? What does it look like? Are we going to see a similar drop in the Conservative to Reform vote share post local elections that we saw last time? There's a lot of really big questions in the national picture, so subscribe if you want to see where all of this goes, because it's genuinely a really interesting time in British politics at the moment. You have this fight for control in the right of politics between Reform, Conservatives, and now I guess to a certain extent Restore, who probably take up about this much of the vote. So, you start adding that to Reform. Great, they're back above 30%. Give that to Conservatives, they're all done within a few percent of Reform. So absolutely trying to win the trust of these Restore voters is really important, actually, for any of these right-wing parties, just to try to cement their position a little bit, because it is a proper fight, especially for the Conservative Party, if the local elections are anywhere near as bad as we expect them to be, and we'll go on to that in just 1 second. If we see another drop like the last local elections, we could comfortably see them drop sub 15%. And, Reform being back above 30% and really consolidating themselves with double the vote share. So yeah, it's really important times for the Conservative Party, and really they do need to try to limit some of their losses here. So look at some of the data that we've produced this week. We look at the weighted poll tracker. How does this vary to the 2025 local elections? Reform, margin of error, fairly stagnant, in a stronger position than they were before, but obviously with those few points dropping, they are back down to only 1% up on their 2025 level. Labour Party down 5.5% on this time last year, actually only 11 months ago, because we're still a month out from the local elections. So, they've had a really, really tough year, and down 22 points on their national picture compared to 2022. Really significant losses coming their way in just 4 weeks' time. Conservative Party, they've also lost nearly half of their vote share, down 16% from 34%. So again, really significant losses coming their way. Lib Dems, they are down 1.5% on last year, but vitally up 2% on 2022. So expect them to pick up maybe a couple of hundred Conservative seats, given how big their vote share drop off is going to be. But really, at the local elections this year, the Green Party proportionately are going to have the strongest performance compared to last year, because they are up 7%. They have nearly doubled their vote share in just 1 year. So as we're heading into London, which is going to be a very significant battleground, if we take a look at Britain Votes Now, a really good website to take a look at what's up for grabs in the local elections this year, how much of this area, how many of these wards are going to turn green? If we head to elections, etc., a prediction from Stephen Fisher does have the Green Party up around 450 seats. Can they go up 500-600 seats? It really does just depend. The scale of success for the Green Party will be how strongly they perform in these London boroughs. But if we look at the predicted losses, Labour losing probably about 3/4 of the seats that they're coming into this election with. Conservatives down 1,000. Don't get me wrong, the Labour figure absolutely scales it in comparison, but that is still cataclysmic for the Conservative Party. A lot of these losses are happening in these areas that were delayed from last year. So, we're looking at the Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, the Sussex seats, the Hampshire Council as well. So these are where these big losses are coming from. Reform should pick up, a good couple of hundred seats in just these areas alone. But really, the big picture is Reform winning all across the country. There's not really an area where they're too weak at the moment. Obviously, they're not going to do so well in cities, but even in London, we're expecting them to pick up, we're still expecting to pick up potentially even some councils. So yeah, I think for Reform, even a poor night for them is still a really, really strong evening. They're going to pick up well over 1,000 seats. There's no question of that at all. So yeah, looking at this picture, obviously really bad night, potentially completely cataclysmic coming for Labour and the Conservative Party. Think the 2019 European elections, plague on both your houses kind of message. And yeah, really good night for Reform, really good night for the Greens. Lib Dems, they're going to pick up a few hundred seats and they're going to be fairly happy. So we'll be doing one of these videos every week to get an update on what the national picture's looking like, as well as any specific videos on any big polls that come out that we want to do some deep dives into. So this is the first video on this channel. I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, leave a like and help us out. The Twitter account, or the X account that we use, is at @PoliticsUK. You get it? Because it's like Politics UK, but it's polling. Very clever. So guys, I hope to see you all next time. Let me know what you'd like to see from these kind of videos if you found it insightful. I really appreciate it. So guys, thank you so much, and I will see you later. Have a good week.